Something happened at school, which only, I assume, one person on earth knows what happened. She came home. I was told her left eye, I think it was swollen. And the teacher happened to be on the bus. It was a school program, a summer program, ESY. And he said, we don't know what happened. It was at the end of the day, and the nurse looked at it and just, you should watch it. Okay, anything else? Well, she also shut down. She was really quiet the last half of the day. Wasn't interacting with anyone like usual. Okay. Anything else? No. The two things he didn't mention, which I discovered in the next couple of hours, was her bra was on inside out. Now, everybody says that nobody changed her shirt, it didn't get drool soaked, and then it was the same shirt she went to school in. I dress her in the morning. I actually, because I was a magician, did a lot of sleight of hand as a young man. I'm very oh yeah, I am very dexterity, a lot of dexterity in my fingers. I put her bra on with one hand in the morning. The way I just tilt her up on her changing table, and I can grab both ends and clasp it. I could only put her bra on one way because of the hooks and the things. I can't put it on inside out, physically. And then when bathing her that night, she had a very small cut where she shouldn't have had a cut on her vulva. Putting it all together, the shutting down is what you do when you have nothing else and no other way to react. So something happened that day. A firestorm ensued. The school ended up self-reporting to the state. Because Pearlsky is an adult, it's actually handled much more intensely than Child Protective Services, Adult Protective Services. I was told that by the state investigator who was directly dealing with the state attorney general. There were lots of questions. I kept her home from school. I had a meeting with the superintendent. I made certain feelings clear in what we should do. I worked with the school, but it got to be rather complicated. I was questioned. Nobody ever had a problem with me. But I was questioned by town detectives, state police. Questions like, why didn't you take her to Children's Hospital right away? And lots of fairly difficult questions that people just wouldn't understand the answers to. Something happened. We have other proof that things happened. She lost some weight over the summer. And totally separately, I had asked a couple of people, when do you think she started? Almost nanny at home, her aide at school, all pretty much said about when the school program started, which is when the incident happened. And I was talking with her GI doctor several months later, and I said to him as an aside, I didn't even think of it, he knew nothing. I said, I don't know why I'm mentioning it to you, but Pearlsky had lost about 4 or 5 pounds, and she only weighs 88 pounds. I said, but she's getting it back. And I said, her appetite, I don't know what happened. And he just turned to me and said straight out, what happened to her? I said, what do you mean? He said, we hear about this at transitions, when they change school. And he said, there's nothing she can do other than refuse to eat. Basically, they said, you know, what do you want to do? They couldn't argue with the facts. We didn't have direct proof of anything. I tried to explain to the superintendent, a gentleman, who I'm told has a somewhat disabled child, but in my world, no, the kid's fine. And I said, and Bill, I said, in the morning, I bet you and I do the same thing. I said, you wake up in the morning, first thing you do is wiggle your toes and your fingers. I said, yeah. Get out of bed, maybe put on some slippers, grab your robe, yeah. Walk down the hall. I said, yeah. go into your daughter's room and see if she's breathing? And he looked at me. He said, do you check to see if your child is alive first thing in the morning? I've done it every day for 20 years. So, and then I give her 6, 7, 8 different medicines, dress her, pack her up, and I hand her to you. And I have no idea what's coming back. So we're a lot alike, huh? I said, sometimes she comes back bruised from illegal restraints. That got his attention. He shot a look at the 2 directors who were like looking down and shaking their heads yes, because they knew that story. Basically, he agreed. I could have sent Pearlsky out of district. He would have sent her to Paris, France, and paid for a program there. I told him that he has a problem. I said, I'm not going to put Pearlsky through anything. And I said, you have to figure out, because you have a problem in your program. We made arrangements. There were 2 aides that I had known for many years, and the agreement was one of them would be with her at all times, period. So she's still there. She's going to place out in the next couple of months anyway, after a year. I'm looking for an adult program, having difficulties finding the right one for other reasons. She's still there. Every morning I kiss her and I put her on that bus. And every day I leave work, I get home to meet her. And I see what the condition is of my daughter. I was asked why I didn't bring her to Children's Hospital. The question is, why didn't you have a rape kit done, is what the question is. And this also deals with your question. How do you deal with a woman who's been traumatized? And I know women who's been traumatized. Dear, dear friend of mine is a counselor for women who've been traumatized. Traumatized meaning abused, raped, whatever. And all we can do in the society, well, there's retribution, but it's counseling and therapy, and dealing with PTSD and whatever, and it's horrendous. Let's say nothing happened at school, and I took her to Children's, and they did a rape kit, which involves, as you know, her diaper and a speculum and swabs. And pretty traumatizing when you can't explain what it is, especially to a young lady who has urinary infections and doesn't like having tests down there, so to speak. So if nothing happened at school, what have we done? We have traumatized her at the hospital. Can't explain it, can't give her therapy, can't do anything about it. Now let's say something did happen at school. She was traumatized, and we take her to Children's Hospital. So as I explained to all the investigators and the superintendent, I said, you're not traumatizing her twice. That's not going to happen. I said, this is your problem. Screw the greater good. I don't care if you find the guy or not, or the woman. It's not happening again. Otherwise, it's your problem. I'm not worrying about the greater good. So do you worry about, letting people know it happened and privacy issues? Well, privacy was violated when I had strange detectives come to my house, when I had a state investigator call me and meet with me and talk about it, when people at the school knew and the school was being investigated, even though they brought that on themselves. You keep it totally inside, it just destroys you.
I actually meant Pearlsky's.
Her privacy. Question is, who knows about it? It's mentioned on my blog. My blog's read at times by like over 1,000 people, which boggles my mind. Typically 50, 60 people, Out of those people, 3, 4 interact with her.
Oh, right. So they don't actually know.
It's an anonymous blog. Facebook. I have like 75 friends. There were hints that the stuff happened. Out of those 75 friends, most of them I don't even remember from elementary school. So people don't really know about it. Pearlsky's not out in public. She doesn't really have friends. people that know about it are the ones that have to keep me sane. We went to see one of her doctors in September. So this is 4 months after the fact. And Pearlsky was fine, and I was talking to a wonderful, wonderful doctor who's known her for 17 years. And Pearlsky was just, her fingers were in her mouth, she was happy. And the doctor turned and said, by the way, what ended up happening with the incident that day? I said, well, afterwards, and I was maybe one sentence into it, and Pearlsky burst into tears. And the doctor looked at me and changed the subject. That was one of the worst days of my life. And it was funny because about dinner time, and the day is very important. That was Erev Yom Kippur, which is the holiest day in my religion. And the day is dedicated to forgiveness, dedicated to prepare for the day, which was the next day, but it started at sundown. You ask for forgiveness from those you've done wrong. A lot more complicated than that. And I wasn't able to go to any prayers that night or anything. I was pretty much on the bathroom floor crying because Pearlsky knew. I ended up on the phone with a woman that you've interviewed. And I was talking to Claire. And I said, she knows. She knows. She burst into tears as soon as the doctor started talking about it. And I was just a mess. And she yelled at me. She stood up to me. For some reason, my internet persona is a little intimidating, I'm told. And she said, well, did you talk to her? I said, well, if she understands what happened, you go talk to her. You talk to her now. If you need to ask for forgiveness, it's whatever the funny name of that holiday is. That's what today is. She goes, you go talk to Pearlsky. And she was rather strong and vehement with me, which people aren't all that often. And I hung up the phone, and I got Pearlsky out of her wheelchair. Something we haven't done in about 12 years. I put her on the waterbed with me. And I sat there and I talked to her for about an hour, hour and a half. And I made her certain promises. I have visited her at school every day since that day. It was a surprise visit. Sometime during the day I go in. Did she understand what I was saying? Well, she'll tell me in heaven. And we fell asleep. Each detective actually asked me, they would say, she's in school now, right? I'd say, yes, she's back in school. So do you feel she's safe? And I said, well, the day I sent her in back in July, I put her on the bus in the morning. I felt she was safe. This morning, I put her on the bus. I felt she was safe. What's the difference? I said, the question is meaningless. I felt she was safe then. I said, if I say no, if I tell you right now, no, I don't feel she's safe going on the bus, you will take her away from me because I am knowingly endangering her. So I can't tell you I don't think she's safe. And if I tell you I feel she's safe, the last time I felt that way, she was molested. And they look at me. So yeah, I feel she's safe. Next question.
Sounds like you make your own deals with the devil every day.
Every day. You never know what's right. I didn't protect my daughter that day. I put her on that bus. The last words she heard, she hears, every day on the bus, I adore you, as I walk towards the house.